Okay, let's orient ourselves. It is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. If you've been watching the financial wires this month, you might have noticed a shift in the atmosphere. There's this distinct rising tension around a topic that honestly usually feels like it belongs in a theoretical physics classroom.
It does feel like we've crossed some kind of threshold, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For years, quantum computing was this abstract, almost sci-fi concept. It
Yeah.
sat in that mental bucket with, flying cars and bases on Mars,
Yeah.
things we knew were possible, but definitely a problem for the 2030s,
Right.
or even later.
Right. But here we are, January 2026, and suddenly the G7, the Bank of England, the US Treasury, they are not talking about this like it's sci-fi anymore.
Not at all.
They're treating it like an operational emergency. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why. I mean, why the disconnect? If the supercomputers that can break encryption aren't even online yet, and to be clear, they aren't, why is the financial world acting like the house is already on fire?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. And to answer it, we're going deep into a piece by Johan Steyn. He's a thought leader who really gets the intersection of AI and security, and he wrote this article, Quantum Security, the Financial Sector's Race Against Time.
And what he argues is fascinating because it's just so counterintuitive. He essentially frames the biggest threat not as, a physics problem, but as a management problem.
Exactly. He calls it a program management challenge.
Which I have to say sounds incredibly dry. You hear program management and you think spreadsheets, Gantt charts, boring Tuesday meetings.
Of course.
But Steyn argues this boring logistical reality is actually the scariest part of the whole quantum threat.
It really is. Because we're conditioned by movies to think of cybersecurity as this battle of wits. Hackers versus defenders, code versus code, all in real time.
Yeah, a frantic keyboard battle.
Right. But Steyn just flips that on its head. He says the race isn't about beating the quantum computer. It's about beating the bank's own bureaucracy.
Its own inertia.
Beating the sheer weight of its legacy infrastructure before it all collapses under a new reality.
So let's unpack this. Steyn starts by addressing the panic. Because from the outside, with the G7 cyber expert group publishing that huge transition roadmap a few weeks ago, it looks like panic.
It does.
But Steyn says it's not panic, it's math. Specifically, the math of timelines.
Right. We call this the two clocks problem. And it's the fundamental concept you have to grasp to understand why 2026 feels so pivotal.
Okay, walk us through the clocks.
So picture two countdown clocks on the wall of a chief risk officer's office. Clock number 1 is counting down to Q-Day.
Q-Day.
That's the moment a cryptographically relevant quantum computer comes online. A machine powerful enough to crack the encryption that protects, well, everything in finance today.
And that clock it's fuzzy, right? We don't know the exact time on it.
Exactly. It's blurry. It might say 4 years. It might say 7. There's a lot of uncertainty because, scientific breakthroughs are unpredictable. But then you have clock number 2.
And this is the one Steyn is focused on.
Yes. Clock number 2 measures how long it takes a huge global bank, a GSIB, to fully inventory, test, and migrate its entire cryptographic infrastructure to new quantum-safe standards.
And Steyn's point is that we actually do know what Clock 2 says.
We do, and it says years. 5, maybe 7 years, and that's if nothing goes wrong.
So the math is simple and terrifying. If Clock 2, the fix, takes longer than the time left on Clock 1, the threat...
You've already lost.
Wow.
You are effectively hacked before the hacker even exists. And that is why we're seeing this flurry of activity right now.
Yeah.
That G7 report wasn't just suggested reading, it was a collective realization that waiting is the riskiest possible strategy.
If you wait until the machine is invented, you are mathematically guaranteed to fail.
Precisely.
I want to push on this waiting aspect because I think this is where it breaks down for most people. In our lives, technology is instant. If there's a security flaw in my phone, Apple pushes an update, I click install, and 3 minutes later, I'm safe. Why can't a bank just patch the system? Why does Steyn say this takes years?
This is where we run into the uncomfortable truth of banking tech. We have to look at what a bank actually is under the hood. It is not a sleek, modern app.
It's a museum of code.
In many ways, yes. It's what we call the spaghetti problem. You have core banking platforms, the actual ledgers that might be running on COBOL mainframe code from the 1970s.
The dreaded legacy systems.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just that the code is old. It's that the cryptography, the mathematical locks, are deeply embedded. It's not a wrapper you could just peel off and replace.
It's baked into the logic of the system itself.
It's baked in.
So give me a concrete example. Why is swapping out, say, RSA for a new quantum safe algorithm so hard? Isn't it just changing one math equation for another?
You'd hope so, but no.
Yeah.
Let's get a little technical for a second because this is crucial. Think about key sizes. Yeah. Current encryption keys are pretty compact. They fit neatly into standard database fields. They transmit quickly. The new post-quantum cryptography, PQC, it works differently. A lot of it is what we call lattice-based cryptography. And the keys and signatures can be, well, huge by comparison.
So it's digitally heavier.
Much heavier.
Yeah.
Now, imagine you have a database built in 1995. The little field for a security key has a character limit. You try to shove a massive PQC key into that slot. What happens?
It doesn't fit. The whole thing breaks.
The whole application crashes. Now multiply that by 10,000 applications. And it's not just storage, it's latency.
Speed.
Right. Think about high-frequency trading. Those systems rely on microseconds. If your new secure handshake takes 3 times as long because the math is more complex, you could break the entire trading algorithm.
You'd miss the market.
You miss the market. So it's not just a security upgrade. It's a plumbing upgrade.
You have to widen all the pipes and reinforce the foundations just to handle the new locks.
Exactly. And Steyn points out that this ripples through everything: performance, storage, and critically interoperability.
And in finance, interoperability isn't a buzzword. It's the whole game. If my system can't talk to your system, money doesn't move.
Correct. And that brings us to the testing nightmare. Steyn really emphasizes this. In a consumer app, if an update is buggy, maybe your game crashes. It's annoying, but fine.
Right.
In a bank, if you update the crypto and it breaks the payment rail, billions of dollars just start moving.
You can't move fast and break things when you're moving the global GDP.
You absolutely cannot. Downtime is expensive, but it's also reputationally fatal. So the testing windows are incredibly small. You might only get a few weekends a year to touch the core systems.
Which explains why Clock 2 is so slow. It's not that they don't know how to do it.
No.
It's that they can't touch the patient while the heart is beating.
That's a perfect analogy. And this is why the boardroom conversation has shifted so dramatically. Steyn notes that boards aren't asking when will quantum arrive anymore. That's the old passive question.
Right, that just puts the responsibility on the physicist. Tell us when you're done.
Exactly. The new question is active. How long will it take us to transition safely? The risk isn't the specific moment the encryption breaks. The risk is being forced into a rushed change.
A panic migration.
Yes. If you wake up and the quantum computer is here and you haven't started, you have to rip and replace systems under emergency conditions. That is when mistakes happen.
So we've established the bank itself is this mess of tangled wires, the spaghetti problem. But Steyn brings up another layer to this, which I found even more daunting.
The ecosystem problem.
No bank is an island.
This is where the headache really begins.
Because even if I am the most forward-thinking CTO in the world and I get my own house in order, I'm still connected to everyone else.
We saw this highlighted in reports from late last year, December 2025. Finextra reported on the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS testing PQC with SWIFT.
And SWIFT is the nervous system of global money.
It is. And Steyn makes the point that payments are a shared ecosystem. If I send you a wire transfer, my bank talks to your bank, but it might go through 3 other banks along the way. The chain. Now imagine my bank has upgraded. I send a message wrapped in this new quantum safe encryption, but the bank in the middle, maybe a smaller regional bank, hasn't upgraded yet.
They can't read the envelope.
They can't read the envelope. The transaction fails. Or worse, it gets stuck. Or, to make it work, I have to downgrade my security to their level, which just defeats the whole purpose.
It's the weakest link scenario. Your security is only as good as the slowest bank in the chain.
And it's not just banks. It's third-party vendors, cloud providers. MasterCard had a white paper on this in 2025 that touched on this operational and strategic complexity. They were basically warning everyone, you can't just buy a quantum shield. The whole network has to be ready.
That creates a weird game theory dynamic, doesn't it? If I spend $1 billion upgrading but my partners don't, I'm still vulnerable. But if I wait for them...
We're all vulnerable. And that is exactly why the regulators are stepping in now. They're trying to solve that coordination problem by force. Bloomberg had a report back in October where capital markets voices were warning the window to act is narrowing.
Window to act is narrowing. That's regulator speak for we are about to start fining people.
It is. They're getting ready to prod firms. This is no longer some optional R&D project. It's becoming a board-level fiduciary duty.
Okay, so let's pivot. The scope is massive. The timeline is tight. If I'm a leader listening to this, How do you even start to eat this elephant?
Well, Steyn is very clear on what not to do. Do not go out and try to buy a quantum-safe product and think you're done.
Put the corporate credit card away?
Right. There is no silver bullet.
Mhm.
Instead, you build a credible migration program. And he lists some steps that, again, sound incredibly boring but are absolutely vital.
Step 1,
Inventory.
just counting what you have.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But remember the spaghetti. Most huge organizations don't actually know where all their cryptography lives. It's what we call shadow IT,
The server under the desk?
the server under the desk. The line of code a developer wrote in 2014 and then left. You cannot manage the risk if you can't answer the basic question, where are we exposed?
It's like changing the light bulbs in a house, but half of them are hidden inside the wall.
And you have to find them first. Steyn emphasizes that automated discovery tools are crucial. You can't do this with a spreadsheet.
Okay, so you found all the hidden light bulbs. Step 2.
Triage. Prioritize. You can't change everything at once. You look for systems that are high value and high risk.
So things holding the crown jewels money or identity data.
Right. But you also look for systems that are long duration.
What does that mean?
It means systems where the data needs to stay secret for a really long time. Think about a mortgage contract that lasts 30 years. Or pension data. That's priority 1.
Because that data needs to be safe in the 2030s, 2040s, and beyond.
Exactly. And that leads to step 3. Align with your normal refresh cycles.
It is the don't go broke step.
Ideally, yes. Banks are always updating hardware and software. If a server is due for replacement in 2027, you plan to make it quantum safe then. You bake the upgrade into the normal life cycle.
So you're not spending extra to rip out a new system, you're just making sure the next one is bulletproof.
That's the smart way to do it. It saves money. It reduces disruption. But, and this is the catch, you can only do that if you have a plan today.
If you wait, you miss the bus.
You miss the bus. Then you have to pay for a dedicated emergency upgrade, and that gets expensive.
It really all comes back to program management, doesn't it? It's all about timing.
It is, and there's a concept Steyn mentions called crypto agility. That's the holy grail.
Crypto agility.
It just means building your systems so the cryptography isn't hard-coded. It's more like a cartridge you can swap out. So in the future, if the standard changes again, you don't have to rebuild the entire bank.
You're future-proofing the architecture, not just the code.
Exactly.
I want to zoom out for a second to the global perspective. Steyn brings up South Africa and emerging markets. It feels like there's a risk of a quantum divide, where rich countries get the shields and everyone else is left behind.
It's a valid fear. But Steyn argues that emerging markets actually cannot afford to be left behind. He says they can't opt out.
Because of that ecosystem we talked about.
Precisely. A bank in Johannesburg interoperates with banks in London and New York. Their vendors are global. If a South African bank isn't secure, the global network might just quarantine them.
You become the weak link.
Right. And trust is the currency of banking. If you're an emerging market, showing you are quantum ready is a massive signal of reliability. It's a competitive advantage.
So when we pull all this together, the timeline, the spaghetti code, the ecosystem, this really isn't a story about a futuristic supercomputer anymore.
That's the aha moment.
Yeah.
This is a logistical drama. The race against time is not a sci-fi thriller. It is a story about project managers and IT directors trying to turn a massive ship before it hits an iceberg they can't quite see yet.
It's the ultimate tortoise and hare situation. The quantum computer is the hare fast, flashy, coming up behind us. The bank is the tortoise slow, heavy, carrying 50 years of legacy code.
And the tortoise has to start walking now if it wants to finish the race before the hare catches up.
I love that line from Steyn. In finance, the upgrade cycle is the clock that matters. It's so grounding, it takes the hype out of it and puts the responsibility right back on the humans running these systems.
It does. It reminds us that technology doesn't just happen to us. We have to manage it. The smartest posture is, well, boring and disciplined.
Boring is good. When it comes to my life savings, I want boring.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. We've been talking about protecting money, transactions, the now, but there's another angle here, and honestly, it's the one that keeps me up at night.
You're talking about the harvest now, decrypt later attack.
Yeah. We touched on data longevity, but let's really look at it. If we're rushing to fix this now because data has value for a long time, doesn't that imply a threat that's already here?
It does. Here's a scenario. Bad actors don't need a quantum computer today. All they need is hard drive space.
They're just scooping up the data now.
They're intercepting encrypted traffic, your health records, government secrets, your private communications, and they're just storing it. They can't read it yet. It's just scrambled nonsense to them.
But they're keeping it in a digital warehouse, waiting for clock number 1 to hit 0.
Exactly. The moment that quantum computer comes online, they just feed all that harvested data into it, and it unlocks everything retroactively.
So we are fixing the lock on the vault, but someone might have already made a photocopy of everything inside.
That is the chilling reality. For data that has already been stolen, it might just be too late. The migration we're talking about today is to protect future data, to stop the bleeding.
That certainly raises the stakes on why wait and see is such a dangerous game. It's not just about what happens in 2030, it's about what's being stolen today in 2026.
And that is why the G7 and the central banks and people like Johan Steyn are making so much noise right now. The clock isn't ticking. It's been ticking.
On that cheerful note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible race happening inside your bank. It's January 2026, and the race is definitely on.
It was a pleasure. Stay curious, everyone.
See you next time.